The morning sun cast golden rays through the tall windows of Kensington Palace, as Catherine, Duchess of Cambridge, stood before her ornate mirror. Her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted the delicate diamond earrings that had once belonged to Princess Diana. Today was different from any other royal engagement she had attended. The weight of expectations pressed down on her shoulders like an invisible crown. William entered the room quietly, his military dress uniform perfectly pressed and adorned with ceremonial medals. He noticed the tension in his wife's posture immediately. After years of marriage, he could read her emotions like an open book. The way she held her shoulders just a little too straight, the manner in which she touched her jewelry repeatedly, these were signs that Catherine was fighting her nerves. "You look absolutely stunning," he whispered, placing his hands gently on her shoulders. Catherine met his eyes in the mirror's reflection, and for a moment the royal protocols and public expectations faded away. They were simply a husband and wife, supporting each other before a significant moment. The event they were preparing for was the annual state banquet, but this year held special significance. It marked the 10th anniversary of their wedding, and the Queen had specifically requested that they make the opening entrance together. It would be broadcast live to millions around the world, and every detail would be scrutinized by media outlets and royal watchers. Catherine's stylist, Amanda, made final adjustments to the flowing sapphire gown that complemented the famous engagement ring, sparkling on her finger. The dress had been carefully chosen to honor British designers while maintaining the timeless elegance expected of the future queen. Every fold of fabric had been steamed to perfection, every bead sewn with precision. Outside, crowds had already begun gathering along the palace route. Royal enthusiasts from around the globe had traveled to witness this moment, some camping overnight to secure the best viewing positions. The energy in the air was electric, filled with anticipation and genuine affection for the royal couple who had captured hearts worldwide. William's private secretary knocked gently on the door, announcing that their departure time was approaching. The couple exchanged one final look of encouragement. Catherine took a deep breath, transforming herself from the nervous woman of moments before into the poised duchess the world expected to see. William offered his arm, and together they stepped into the corridor that would lead them to their destiny. The palace staff lined the hallways, each person having played a role in preparing for this momentous occasion. From the chefs who had spent days perfecting the menu to the florists who had arranged thousands of roses, everyone understood they were part of something truly special. The couple walked past familiar faces, offering warm smiles and quiet words of gratitude. As they approached the grand staircase, the sound of the assembled guests below grew louder. Distinguished visitors from around the world waited in the ballroom, their conversations creating a gentle hum of excitement. Camera crews positioned themselves strategically, ready to capture every second of what promised to be an unforgettable entrance. Catherine's heartbeat quickened as they reached the top of the stairs. Below them spread a sea of elegant evening wear, sparkling jewels, and expectant faces. The chandeliers cast dancing shadows across the walls, and the scent of fresh flowers filled the air. This was the moment they had prepared for, the culmination of weeks of planning and a lifetime of training for their royal roles. William squeezed his wife's hand gently, a silent reminder that they faced this together, just as they had faced every challenge since their university days. The young couple who had once worried about exams and career choices had evolved into confident representatives of the British crown, ready to create a memory that would last forever. The orchestra's conductor raised his baton as the royal couple appeared at the top of the grand staircase. The first notes of the ceremonial fanfare echoed through the ballroom, causing every conversation to stop instantly. All eyes turned upward to witness the entrance that would be remembered for generations. Catherine's sapphire gown caught the light from dozens of crystal chandeliers, creating an almost ethereal glow around her figure. The diamonds in her tiara, on loan from the Queen's personal collection, sparkled like stars against her carefully styled hair. Each step down the marble stairs was measured and graceful, the result of years of deportment training and natural poise. William, resplendent in his ceremonial uniform, maintained perfect military posture, while staying protectively close to his wife. The medals on his chest told the story of his service to crown and country, but tonight they seemed secondary to his role as Catherine's devoted husband. His eyes swept the crowd below, acknowledging the distinguished guests while remaining focused on the moment. Photographers captured every angle as the couple descended, their cameras clicking in rhythm with the orchestral music. The world's media had gathered for this event, understanding that they were witnessing something truly spectacular. Royal correspondents, who had covered countless ceremonies, later described this entrance as one of the most memorable they had ever seen. Among the guests stood ambassadors, prime ministers, celebrities, and charity leaders, all united in their admiration for the couple's grace under pressure. Many had attended previous royal events, but there was something different about tonight. Perhaps it was the significance of the anniversary, or maybe it was the genuine warmth that radiated from William and Catherine as they moved through the crowd. Queen Elizabeth II watched from her position near the head table, her eyes filled with pride and satisfaction. She had mentored Catherine since their engagement, helping her understand the delicate balance between public duty and personal authenticity. Seeing her granddaughter-in-law navigate this moment with such confidence confirmed that her guidance had taken root. Prince Philip, despite his advanced age, stood straight and tall beside his wife, remembering his own early days as a royal spouse. He recognized the pressure that came with such public scrutiny and felt genuine respect for how well Catherine had adapted to her role. The young woman who had once seemed overwhelmed by royal protocol had blossomed into a natural leader. Catherine paused briefly at the bottom of the staircase, allowing the photographers one final shot before the formal receiving line began. In that moment, she caught sight of her parents, Michael and Carol Middleton, among the guests. Their faces beamed with pride and love, reminding her of the ordinary girl from Berkshire who had somehow found herself in this extraordinary life. The couple began moving through the crowd, stopping to greet each dignitary personally. Catherine's genuine interest in every conversation was evident in her body language and facial expressions. She remembered details about previous meetings, asked thoughtful questions about ongoing projects, and made each person feel valued and heard. William complimented his wife's warmth with his own brand of easy charm, switching effortlessly between languages and cultural references, depending on his conversation partner. Together, they created an atmosphere of inclusivity and celebration that transformed what could have been a stuffy, formal event into something approaching a joyful family gathering. The evening's first course was announced, but few guests seemed eager to sit down. The energy created by William and Catherine's entrance had infused the entire ballroom with excitement. Conversations flowed freely, laughter echoed from every corner, and the usual formality of state dinners gave way to genuine human connection. As the formal dinner progressed, an unexpected moment of vulnerability emerged that would make headlines around the world. During the main course, a young server accidentally knocked over a glass of wine near Catherine's place setting. The red liquid splashed across the pristine white tablecloth, creating a dark stain that seemed to grow before everyone's eyes. The room fell silent for a heartbeat. Protocol demanded that such incidents be handled discreetly by staff, with minimal acknowledgement from the royal family. Every eye in the ballroom watched to see how the Duchess would respond to this breach of formal etiquette. Catherine's reaction surprised everyone. Instead of pretending nothing had happened or waiting for staff to clean up, she immediately reached for her napkin and began helping the embarrassed young woman clean up the spill. Her warm smile and gentle reassurance transformed what could have been a mortifying moment into a display of genuine kindness. "These things happen to all of us," Catherine said softly, her voice carrying enough warmth to put the flustered server at ease. "I once spilled an entire pot of tea at my first royal engagement. At least wine has better flavor than lukewarm Earl Grey." The ballroom erupted in gentle laughter at her self-deprecating humor. William grinned broadly at his wife's ability to handle the situation with such grace. The other guests, many of whom had been nervous about their own potential social missteps, visibly relaxed as they witnessed this display of relatable humanity from their future queen. The young server, whose name was Emma, and who had worked at the palace for only 3 months, later described the moment as life-changing. Catherine's kindness in that instant of crisis gave her confidence that carried through the rest of her career. Years later, Emma would become one of the palace's most trusted staff members, often sharing the story of the Duchess's compassion with new employees. News outlets around the world picked up the story, but their coverage was overwhelmingly positive. Royal commentators noted that Catherine's response demonstrated the evolution of the monarchy toward a more accessible and empathetic institution. Social media exploded with praise for her down-to-earth approach to an awkward situation. The incident also revealed something deeper about William and Catherine's partnership. Without any verbal communication, William had immediately stood to offer assistance, showing his unwavering support for his wife's instinctive response. Their synchronized reaction spoke to years of shared values and mutual understanding. Queen Elizabeth, watching from the head table, felt a profound sense of satisfaction. She had spent decades navigating the balance between royal dignity and human connection, often erring on the side of formality to maintain respect for the institution. Seeing Catherine handle the situation with both grace and genuine warmth suggested that the monarchy's future was in capable hands. The conversation at dinner shifted after the wine incident, becoming more relaxed and personal. Guests who had been carefully rehearsing their formal talking points instead found themselves sharing genuine stories and experiences. The artificial barriers that often characterize state dinners began dissolving, replaced by authentic human interaction. Catherine continued to surprise observers throughout the meal by remembering personal details about many of the guests. She asked a diplomat's wife about her daughter's recent graduation, inquired about a charity leader's new initiative for homeless veterans, and congratulated a young entrepreneur on his recent business success. Each conversation demonstrated genuine interest rather than superficial politeness. William, inspired by his wife's example, began sharing more personal anecdotes about their recent travels and charitable work. His usually reserved public persona gave way to the engaging conversationalist his friends knew him to be. Together they created an atmosphere where formal protocol enhanced rather than hindered genuine connection. As dessert was served, many guests commented that this felt different from typical royal events. The combination of traditional elegance and authentic warmth had created something entirely new, a template for how modern royalty could honor the past while embracing a more inclusive future. The evening's most emotional moment came during the traditional toasts, when William surprised everyone by requesting permission to speak beyond the scheduled remarks. Standing beside his wife, he looked out at the assembled guests with an expression that mixed gratitude, love, and determination. 10 years ago, Catherine and I promised to serve together, he began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. We had no idea then what that service would truly mean, or how much we would learn from the incredible people we've had the privilege to meet along the way. Catherine's eyes glistened as she listened to her husband speak from the heart. This wasn't the carefully scripted speech their communications team had prepared. This was William speaking as a man who had found his purpose through love and service, addressing people who had become more than diplomatic contacts. They had become friends and partners in creating positive change. He spoke about their early mistakes and learning experiences, drawing laughter when he mentioned their disastrous attempt at making traditional bread during a visit to a local bakery. He became more serious when discussing the profound impact their charitable work had on their perspective, particularly their efforts with homeless shelters and mental health initiatives. Catherine has taught me that true leadership isn't about maintaining distance, William continued, glancing at his wife with obvious admiration. It's about building bridges, finding common ground, and never forgetting that behind every title, every position, every role, there's a human being with hopes, fears, and dreams just like our own. The guests listened in rapt attention as William described specific moments that had shaped their approach to royal duty. He talked about meeting a young veteran struggling with depression, a single mother working 3 jobs to support her children, and an elderly man whose only regular human contact came through a charity lunch program they supported. Catherine wiped away a tear as William recounted her work with children facing serious illnesses. He described watching her spend hours at a hospital, not for a photo opportunity but because she genuinely cared about each child's story. Her ability to remember names, favorite colors, and personal details had created lasting bonds that continued long after the cameras left. The speech took an unexpected turn when William addressed the recent challenges the royal family had faced in the media. Instead of avoiding the topic or offering generic responses, he spoke honestly about the pressure of public life and the importance of staying true to their values despite criticism. There are days when the scrutiny feels overwhelming, he admitted. But then we remember why we're here. We're here because service to others gives our lives meaning. We're here because the platform we've been given can amplify voices that might otherwise go unheard. We're here because love, for each other, for our children, for our country, and for the global community, is stronger than any criticism or controversy. His words resonated particularly strongly with the younger guests present, many of whom face their own challenges with social media pressure and public expectations. Several later commented that William's honesty had inspired them to approach their own platforms with greater authenticity and purpose. Catherine stood to add her own remarks, her voice clear and confident despite the emotion of the moment. She thanked the staff who had made the evening possible, acknowledging everyone from the kitchen crew to the security personnel who worked behind the scenes to ensure successful events. Her words carried special weight because everyone present knew she understood what it meant to work hard for recognition. Before joining the royal family, she had held regular jobs and understood the dedication required to excel in supporting roles. Her acknowledgement of the staff's contributions wasn't mere politeness. It came from genuine appreciation and respect. The toasts concluded with a standing ovation that lasted several minutes. Guests later described feeling inspired not just by the words they had heard, but by witnessing a couple who had transformed their privileged position into a platform for meaningful service. The evening had evolved from a formal state dinner into a celebration of shared values and common purpose. As the formal dinner concluded and guests moved to the ballroom for dancing, an unexpected technical problem threatened to derail the evening's carefully planned entertainment. The sound system that was meant to provide music for the dancing suddenly failed, leaving the ballroom in awkward silence except for the nervous murmur of confused guests. The event coordinators rushed to fix the problem, their faces showing the panic that comes with a major malfunction during a high-profile event. Backup equipment was being located, but it would take at least 20 minutes to set up properly. The timing couldn't have been worse, as this was the moment when guests typically relaxed and enjoyed the more informal portion of the evening. Catherine noticed a small group of musicians in the corner who had been providing ambient music during the reception. They looked as helpless as everyone else, holding their instruments but lacking the electronic amplification needed to fill such a large space. Without consulting protocol officers or event planners, she walked directly over to them. "Would you be willing to play acoustically?" she asked the lead violinist, a young woman who had been specially selected for her talent. Sometimes the most beautiful music comes from the heart, not from speakers. The musicians exchanged uncertain glances. Playing without amplification in such a vast space would be challenging, and they worried their music wouldn't be heard over the crowd's conversations. Catherine seemed to read their hesitation and had an idea that would surprise everyone present. She stepped into the center of the ballroom and, in a voice that carried despite the room's size, addressed the gathering. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a wonderful opportunity tonight. Instead of recorded music, we have talented musicians here who are going to provide something much more special. Live, intimate music that will bring us all together." The guests, intrigued by this unexpected development, moved closer to where the musicians had positioned themselves. Catherine's invitation created an informal circle that transformed the vast ballroom into something resembling a cozy living room gathering. The atmosphere shifted from formal elegance to warm intimacy. William joined his wife in the center of the circle, understanding immediately what she was creating. When the musicians began playing a gentle waltz, he extended his hand to Catherine with a smile that lit up his entire face. Their dance wasn't the carefully choreographed performance that had been planned, but rather an authentic expression of their partnership. Other guests began joining them, but the dancing remained understated and elegant. Conversations continued in hushed tones that didn't compete with the acoustic music, creating a magical atmosphere that felt more like a private party among friends than a state function. The technical failure had accidentally created the evening's most memorable moment. The Queen, who had initially appeared concerned about the departure from protocol, found herself genuinely enjoying this unexpected turn of events. She was seen chatting animatedly with guests she rarely had the opportunity to speak with informally, and even accepted an invitation to dance with her husband, something that hadn't happened at a state function in years. Foreign dignitaries, who typically maintained careful diplomatic distance at such events, began engaging in more relaxed conversations. The intimate setting encouraged people to share personal stories and forge genuine connections, that would continue long after the evening ended. Several business partnerships and charitable collaborations were born from conversations that night. Catherine moved through the crowd during breaks in the dancing, making sure elderly guests had comfortable seating and that everyone felt included in the modified festivities. Her natural hostess instincts, honed during years of entertaining friends and family, served her well in managing what could have been a disaster. The musicians, initially nervous about performing without amplification, found themselves energized by the intimate setting and responsive audience. They extended their repertoire beyond the planned selections, taking requests and even teaching some guests simple folk dances from different cultures represented in the room. Young staff members, who would normally remain invisible during such events, found themselves drawn into the celebration. Catherine specifically invited several of them to join the dancing, breaking down traditional barriers between service providers and guests. Her gesture created lasting loyalty among the palace staff and demonstrated her understanding that everyone present had contributed to the evening's success. As the modified entertainment continued, it became clear that the technical failure had actually enhanced rather than ruined the event. The forced intimacy had created connections and memories that wouldn't have been possible with the originally planned formal dancing program. As the evening drew to a close, William and Catherine found themselves standing together on a quiet balcony overlooking the palace gardens. The last guests were departing, their laughter and warm farewells echoing through the corridors behind them. The couple had stolen a few moments alone to process what had become far more than they had ever expected. Catherine removed her tiara carefully, setting it on a nearby table with a sigh of relief. The weight of the diamond seemed symbolic of the responsibilities she carried, beautiful but sometimes overwhelming. William loosened his ceremonial collar, and for the first time all evening, they looked like the ordinary couple they had once been, before crowns and cameras changed everything. "Did you see Ambassador Peterson dancing with the kitchen assistant?" Catherine asked, laughing softly at the memory. "I don't think protocol training covers what to do when your state dinner turns into a village dance." William chuckled, pulling his wife closer as they gazed out at the moonlit gardens. "I think we just rewrote the protocol manual tonight, though I suspect our communications team might need some recovery time before they're ready to discuss it." They talked quietly about the evening's unexpected moments, the spilled wine that became a lesson in kindness, the technical failure that created the most intimate royal gathering in recent memory, and the genuine connections they had witnessed forming between people from vastly different backgrounds and cultures. Catherine reflected on how nervous she had been that morning, worried about every detail of their entrance and presentation. None of her careful preparations had anticipated the evening's actual challenges, yet somehow everything had worked out better than any script could have planned. The imperfections had become the most perfect parts of the night. "Your speech surprised me," she told William, remembering the emotion in his voice when he spoke from the heart rather than from prepared notes. "When you talked about service and love being stronger than criticism, I saw several people wiping away tears." William nodded thoughtfully. "I've been thinking about that a lot lately. We spend so much time trying to be perfect representations of the monarchy that we sometimes forget the most powerful thing we can offer people is our authentic selves. Tonight felt like we finally got that balance right." The sound of palace staff quietly cleaning up drifted from the ballroom, reminding them that dozens of people had worked behind the scenes to make their evening possible. Catherine made a mental note to personally thank each staff member in the coming days, as she had learned that genuine appreciation created the loyalty and dedication that made such events successful. Their conversation turned to the future and what lessons from this evening they could apply to their ongoing royal duties. The positive response to their more relaxed approach suggested that the public was ready for a monarchy that maintained its dignity while also demonstrating genuine human connection and empathy. William mentioned several guests who had approached him about collaborative projects, from environmental initiatives to mental health awareness campaigns. The evening's atmosphere had encouraged people to think beyond traditional diplomatic exchanges toward meaningful partnerships that could create real positive change in the world. Catherine shared her excitement about connections she had made with several charity leaders who worked with causes close to her heart. The informal conversations had revealed opportunities for support and collaboration, that wouldn't have emerged in typical formal meetings. She felt energized about the potential impact they could have working together. As they prepared to return inside, both understood that this evening would be remembered as a turning point in their approach to royal service. They had discovered that authenticity and formality could coexist, that tradition could embrace change, and that their greatest strength came not from maintaining distance but from building bridges. The couple walked back through the now quiet palace corridors, past portraits of previous generations of royals who had faced their own challenges and changes. Tonight they felt connected not only to that history, but also to a future they were actively creating through their choices and actions. Years later, guests would still talk about that magical evening, when technical problems became opportunities, spilled wine became lessons in grace, and a formal state dinner became an intimate celebration of human connection. It had become exactly what the title promised, a timeless memory that captured the essence of modern royal service at its very best. Catherine hung up her gown carefully, knowing it would be preserved as part of royal history, but also knowing that the real treasure from the evening wasn't what she had worn, but what she and William had learned about leading with both dignity and heart.